So, today, the Israeli Supreme Court was in session to decide the fate of the Palestinian families who are living in East Jerusalem in the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah. Now, again, people think the situation is complicated. It's really not complicated. In the first war in 1948, as you know, this is called the Nakba, which means the catastrophe, the disaster. Why? Because millions of Palestinians were kicked out of Palestine. Many went to Jordan, to Syria, like my cousin Roni, his relatives, and other countries. And then millions were displaced inside Palestine. So they stayed in Palestine, but they became refugees. They lost their homes, and Jewish settlers just took their homes, right? So now some families who were displaced in 1948, they went to Jerusalem, and they started living in this neighborhood in Sheikh Jarrah. And now Israel wants to come and displace them again, a second time. They want to kick them out of their homes so that Jewish settlers can live there. So this has been, we talked about Sheikh Jarrah. I had Zakaria Ode, who's a resident in Sheikh Jarrah, on the show. They have like a checkpoint in the neighborhood. He has to be accompanied to his house like a child by these Israeli soldiers. Like, it's literally an occupation. And this is not just Sheikh Jarrah. This is Palestine. It's under Israeli occupation. So is Israel. So is the Syrian Golan Heights and Lebanon. But Palestine definitely to a greater degree and extent. It's much more horrific. So today in the Supreme Court, I was covering this live on Twitter. If you don't follow me there, go right ahead, because I do things like this. And then, if you want to see it live, you always can. Julian Assange also covered his court case live. So his extradition hearing. So let's just go through the points here very quickly, right? Let's go through these points, because this is very interesting what happened. Now, first of all, this is Muna Al-Kurd, and there's her brother, Muhammad. They're very popular on social media. They live in Sheikh Jarrah. They're one of the families, because today I think there were 4 families being represented in the court, right? So they're very popular on social media. And very outspoken about what's happening to them, because they're threatened with eviction. Again, just so we're clear 1 second, when we say eviction, usually that's like implying like someone didn't pay their rent or something, and still, eviction is bad, it's wrong, it's immoral, especially in light of the end of the eviction moratorium. But these families are being kicked out. This is ethnic cleansing. Do you understand? There's a specific outlined goal, an explicit goal, to replace these Palestinian families with Jewish settlers. Not with people from, Morocco or China or Zimbabwe. No, Jewish settlers, wherever they come from. That's the thing. They usually come from outside the Levant. They come from outside Palestine, right? They're colonizers. So this is ethnic cleansing by definition. This is a textbook definition. And again, it's not just Sheikh Jarrah. Someone said this on Twitter. It's very, very well put. Every Israeli city used to be this neighborhood, used to be a neighborhood, and it was ethnically cleansed. So they're going inside this court, and they can't understand a word, because the entire proceedings are in Hebrew, right? And they're sitting there. You have to imagine that they're sitting in the court. Their legal counsel can speak Hebrew and to interact with to interact with the representative of the Jewish settler organization and the judge. But everything is in Hebrew. So Muhammad, Muna, the other families who are in court, the Palestinian families, they don't speak Hebrew. They have no clue what's going on. It's kind of insane when you think about it. Even I had an idea, perhaps a better idea than them, of what was going on, because I was seeing what journalists who speak Hebrew were typing out, but they were not allowed to bring a translator with them. Muhammad talked about this. He was refused. They rejected his request to bring someone with him to translate. Can you think about that? Like, you're sitting in this so-called Supreme Court, which is a kangaroo court, and they're deciding your fate in front of you, whether to kick you out of your home, which you're born there. Your fathers lived there. Your whole family lives here, and they want to expel you and kick you out, and you have no clue what's happening. So this is very astonishing. Just again, think about the reality of the occupation, what it's like. Because this is not just isolated case, right? Now, the the big development that came out of this today in the court. What happened? Basically, all the previous courts, they agreed that the families should be evicted, right? I'm just going to read you very quickly. This is from Al Jazeera. They just said that lower Israeli courts have approved the expulsions of the 4 families to make way for Jewish settlers. They ruled that their houses were built on land owned by Jews before Israel was established in 1948. Okay? Now, what happened in the court? The judges said they want to reach a compromise. They said, look, let's fix this because, the media is very interested and we want to, just be done with this. And there was a settlement offer where they offered the Palestinian families protected status as tenants. So basically, the offer was that these Palestinian families could continue living in their homes. They would have to pay rent, like a symbolic rent, I think something like $300 a year, something like that, 1,500 shekels. And the ownership would be transferred to the Jewish settler organization. Right? Nahalat Shimon, that's the name of the organization. So I'm going to read this to you again, what I tweeted earlier, right? The Supreme Court has offered Palestinians in Sheikh Jarrah a compromise of protected residence status, allowing them to live there without fear of eviction for now, but would have to pay a small rent to Jewish settler organization Nahalat Shimon, who would then own the homes. I mean, this is insane. Like, why should they have to pay anything? It's their house. Can you imagine if someone bursts into your house and with guns and says, listen, man, you can pay me rent to continue living here, and then when you die, I'm going to take your home. Because that's the deal. They're saying that, don't worry, you're not going to be evicted because you can live here. I think Nabil is their father's name. And again, I'm just talking about the Kurd family for now. There are 4 families and many more. But today they're saying you can live here, your kids can live here, and then when you all die, then we'll take the homes. No, the homes do not belong to you. Why would you sign that away, right? Because that's the whole goal. You have to understand something. People think this is an ownership or rental issue. It's not. It's so much bigger than that. What the Israelis are trying to do here is ethnic cleansing. They're trying to legitimize the occupation. And how are they doing that? With things like this. So they'll try to buy people out, or in this case, threaten them with eviction, just to force them to sign away the ownership. And just by making this offer, you could tell that who owns the houses, the Palestinians. Otherwise, why would they talk about transferring ownership? Now, what's the point of that? It's so that, in the future, they can say, well, look, man, we never kicked anyone out of their homes. There was no ethnic cleansing. These Palestinians, they signed away the ownership. They signed away the homes to Jews. Yeah, you threatened them with eviction. That's why they signed it away. They didn't do it willingly. And this is one of the many tactics that they're using. They're not just doing this in Sheikh Jarrah, by the way, right? There's also something going on in Silwan. Now, it's again, all of Israel was built on shit like this. Do you understand? Either taking the homes with violence, burning villages to the ground. There are villages that don't even exist anymore. There's that book I tried to show you, although it's mainly images, and it's important because they try to tell you that no one was living in Palestine. No, it's very important, right? Before their diaspora. So, in any case, that's the point of this, right? They're trying to force the Palestinians to sign away the homes so that they can claim, oh, look, this is Jewish land, and it's always been Jewish land. And they rejected it. The families rejected it. Okay? So they said, no, we're not taking this offer. Because, well, why should they, right? Why should they? It's just like the partition plan itself, right? You have many people who say, well, the Arabs should have just accepted the partition plan in 1947 and they could have avoided all. No, why should they accept 50% of their land? Are you okay if someone comes in your home and takes half the rooms in your house and says, just accept this? Or I'll kill you and take more? Fuck you. Why would you accept that? Why should they tolerate any of this? Why should they tolerate any of this? So, the judges, they were pressuring this thing to be wrapped up very much. They wanted the families to just sign the shit. And when they gave them time to talk during recess, they wouldn't even allow them out of the room. right? So they said no talking to the media. Just stay in here. You're all in custody until the recess is over, and then we continue. But in the end, the families rejected the proposal. And what happened? What did the judges rule? They didn't make a final ruling. That's the thing. There was no final ruling. They said that they want to find some kind of compromise between the two parties. That's what the judges said. And they said that they will reconvene in 7 days. Well, they said that within 7 days, the Palestinian families have to submit a list of names. A list of names, why? Because these people will be given the protected status. So they're still trying to push this deal, right? Where, okay, just give us your, all the members in your family, give us their names, and all of you will have protected status. You can't be evicted. You don't have to worry about being forced out of your home, but you still have to pay a symbolic rent, and we're still going to take your home when you die. So it's insulting. It's insulting to say the least. So they're still trying to push that. This is a tweet from Hamad. So he said the 3 Supreme Court justices are placing massive pressure on us to reach a settlement with the settler organization, avoiding a substantive ruling regarding our rights in the land. This cowardice is to evade potentially detrimental international ramifications. That's what it's about, right? So they're saying, like, don't worry about who owns the house or something. Just, sign this so you don't have to be evicted. Yeah, it's a ruse. Of course, they want them to sign away their rights. That's what it's about. And, we need to be very clear on something, because I don't think many people have mentioned this, and it's astonishingly clear, although we tend to forget, maybe some of us. The Israelis, their court, their Supreme Court, it doesn't mean anything. Sheikh Jarrah, this neighborhood, is in East Jerusalem, okay? Israeli courts, Israel has no jurisdiction in East Jerusalem. This is like, the United States trying to decide who can live in Montreal or some shit, And I mean, don't get me started on the actual genocide and ethnic cleansing of natives. But just to give you an idea, an example of what's happening here, right? Even if you go and you want to abide by international law and you want to say, like, look, the partition plan was clear, the Israelis get this, the Palestinians get this, Jerusalem was never given to the Israelis. Multiple times the United Nations has come and said, and they voted on this since the beginning, they said Jerusalem is a corpus separatum. It's a separate body. It doesn't belong to anyone. Why did they do this? Because all the Abrahamic monotheistic religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, for them, Jerusalem is pivotal. It's so important to all of these religions. So, in order to avoid any sort of conflict, they were like, okay, we'll just make the holy city of Jerusalem, that's what it's called, the holy city of Jerusalem, a separate body. It doesn't belong to anyone. And it will be under United Nations, okay? And of course, the Israelis, they just invaded it. In 1967, they invaded, they invaded Jerusalem, and they've never left. And of course, it's not just Jerusalem. They've been occupying the Syrian Golan Heights. There's lots of water and oil there, conveniently. They get 1/3 of their water from the Syrian Golan Heights. They invaded the Sinai Peninsula, which they gave back, and also the West Bank. If we're being real, all of Palestine is under occupation. All of Palestine. All of it. Not just, what they call the occupied territories, which is the West Bank and East Jerusalem. No, all of Palestine. But my point here is, even if you want to abide by international law, what does the partition plan say? They say Jerusalem is a separate body. And then Israel in 1967 invades all these territories that I just listed. And then the United Nations Security Council, they pass Resolution 242. And what do they say to the Israelis? They say, fuck off. They say, you have to leave. You have to leave the occupied territories. You have to leave the Syrian Golan Heights. You have to leave the Sinai Peninsula. You have to leave the West Bank. And this is the thing, because even though this was passed unanimously, they didn't actually name these places, right? In the resolution, the British and the Americans are very crafty, aren't they? They don't actually say the names. They just say the occupied they say occupied territories without even the. There's like a whole thing about. Let me read it to you. So here, withdrawal of Israeli armed forces from territories occupied in the recent conflict. They even purposely dropped the right? So they dropped it from the sentence. In any case, everyone knows this includes East Jerusalem and Jerusalem in general. And then what do the Israelis do? They not only stayed there, they annexed it. They annexed Jerusalem entirely in 1980. They passed something called literally the Jerusalem Law, the basic law. And they also annexed the Syrian Golan Heights. And what has the United Nations said about their annexations? They condemned Israel's 1980 Jerusalem law, which declared Jerusalem to be Israel's complete and united capital as a violation of international law. Okay? And it says that the council will not recognize this law. And on Twitter, I also went and I posted about something more than that, right? So it's not just, this is not just the resolutions in 1967 and 1980. It's even as recent as 2011, right? So just take a look over here. I mean, this is a resolution adopted in 2012, excuse me, not 2011, by the General Assembly. What do they say here? They say, reiterates its determination, okay, that any action taken by Israel, the occupying power, to impose its laws, jurisdiction, and administration on the holy city of Jerusalem are illegal and therefore null and void and have no validity whatsoever, and calls upon Israel to immediately cease all such illegal and unilateral measures. So my point here is that any decision by the Israelis about who can live in Sheikh Jarrah and who must leave these homes is fucking null and void. It has no validity whatsoever. Literally, that's what it says. They have no jurisdiction in Jerusalem. Neither do Palestinians, right? I mean, if you look at what the United Nations said, they say it's a corpus separatum. It's a separate body. No one has jurisdiction there. It's an international zone, if you will, right? Just to get what they envisaged, at least. So, it's really important for people to understand that these are colonial courts. You have settler colonizers coming from all over the fucking world. I mean, literally, you saw this guy called Jacob, this American who took their home, and Mona, she's like telling him, "Why are you taking my home?" I'm sure I played that for you. Haven't I played that clip for you?
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is gonna steal it.
No one is allowed to steal it, يا عمي. Jacob, this is not your house.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? Why are you yelling at me? I didn't do this. I didn't do this.
But
it's easy to yell at me, but I didn't do this.
You are stealing my house.
So you get the idea. These people are not natives. They're not indigenous to this area. This Jacob fellow has two nationalities, two passports, right? Where does he come from? New York, somewhere in the States. So he literally has two homes, and then the Palestinian is left with 0 homes. And this is not an isolated case. What do you think Israel is? This is what I try to explain to you. How do you think this place was built? You have people coming from all over the world, and then kicking Palestinians out of their homes, stealing their resources. Not just Palestinians. Again, they did this with Lebanon, with Syria, and then claiming that this is their land. So they have two nationalities. They have, two places they can call home. And the Palestinians are left with nothing on their own land. I mean, this is one of the biggest modern atrocities, truly. So all of these courts, they're kangaroo courts. They whatever they rule is invalid. It has no legality. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. It's like, some British person making a decision in India. Who the fuck are you? You're not from here. Go. This is a colonial institution. Whether it's their district courts, or their high court, their Supreme Court, they're all colonial institutions. And even if you want to follow and abide by international law, you know that the Israelis have no jurisdiction in Jerusalem. You fucking know this. The UN has said this a million times. It's so clear. Even the United States, they voted for Resolution 242, right? And then later on, when the Jerusalem law was passed, so we just looked at that over here. What did they do with 478, Resolution 478? The United States abstained. So, even with that one, it abstained. It wouldn't take a position, but it didn't veto it, so it still passed, right? It's still adopted because everyone else voted for it. So, I mean, if the United States can tell that this is illegal, goodness gracious, like just think how bad that is when the U.S. is kind of condemning Israel. They did in 242 and then 478, they were abstained, so it would pass anyway. That's how illegal this is. And it only changed with Trump. So Trump comes along and then, he moves his embassy, the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, which no one has ever done because it's not the Israeli capital. And to this day, no other country has embassies in Jerusalem because no, right? And of course, Biden has not reversed that. Oh, yeah, that lesser of two evils? No, he's just fine with everything Trump did. I've told you this a million times. So my point here is that this is very disgusting, and this is not an isolated incident. What they're doing here, they're trying to do this, in Silwan. They're trying to do this in other places in occupied Palestine. And this is how they built their so-called country. They stole it. They stole it. It was some colonial project promised by the British. The British left the mandate, handed it over to the UN, which gave them... I mean, this is preposterous, right? What can I say? What can I say? This is how they built their country, man. They stole the homes, the resources, everything. And I think it's also important... I want to make a small a note here, because I think people tend to think that it's just about Palestine. And let's be clear. The situation in Palestine is the worst of them all, because of the ethnic cleansing, the Nakba, just the daily assault on the Palestinian people for 73 years. And you have to consider there was French and British occupation before that. But nonetheless, it's not just about Palestine. You have to understand that Israel, it has done these same things, albeit on a lesser scale, to Syria, to Lebanon, to Egypt, right? So they've taken land from all of these countries before. And they're still occupying Syria and parts of Lebanon. They're still depriving Syria. I wanted to finish up by saying that this is how the country was built. People should be under no illusions, right? This is colonialism. This is a settler colony. The whole idea is that you have people coming from all over the world and taking the homes of Palestinians. That's the only way it works. How do you think it works? It's like that video I made. I said that, Zionism depends on ethnically cleansing Palestinians. And this is a textbook definition of ethnic cleansing. When you forcibly remove a native population and replace it with your own or with another, right? So this is, these forced transfers of population. It's not just about one neighborhood, and that is bad enough. But they've done this all over, okay? And it's so important for people to remember that they have no jurisdiction there. I mean, I don't care what they rule. Even hypothetically, let's say that the Supreme Court, this kangaroo court, decides that the Palestinian families can stay in Sheikh Jarrah. Great, but who the hell asked you? Like, it's not your place. You have no jurisdiction here. You have no authority here to be deciding who can stay in their own fucking home. How generous of you. Who the hell are you? Like the audacity of this. And once again, keep in mind, these people have like two homes, usually. They have two citizenships. It's unreal. So they want to leave Palestinians with nothing, Syrians with nothing. Syrians, they're occupying the Golan Heights. This is a huge, huge, huge gem in the Middle East and the Levant. It has oil, it has water, even snow, and it's extremely important military plateau. So, they've taken that as well. So when they come and they bomb Syrians every week and they attack Syria, at one point, someone in the Mossad, his name is Eli Cohen, he infiltrated the Syrian government and he almost became the fucking defense minister. So, when we talk about being under threat, under attack, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. This impedes the development of Syria, of Lebanon, of Palestine. Palestinians are not even given a state, and that's not just Israelis to blame. It's a worldwide thing. But do you see what I'm saying? You must understand that this behavior, it not just affects Palestinians, even though it affects them the worst, but it affects the surrounding countries as well. Even Iran. Iran is not even left in peace because of Israel.